Nicolas Maduro and his wife are expected to board a helicopter any moment heading to New York City to face charges related to their alleged involvement in narco-terrorism. The 4 counts include narco-terrorism, conspiracy, cocaine importation conspiracy, possession of machine guns and destructive devices, and conspiracy to possess machine guns and destructive devices. Joining us now is Fox News legal analyst Gregg Jarrett. Greg, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your legal expertise here. Take us through the charges and what will the prosecution focus on?
Well, this proves, I think, Tommy, the long arm of American law extends well beyond our borders, and the U.S. has ample legal authority to capture and arrest a known fugitive under federal criminal indictment for, as you point out, drug trafficking, money laundering, all kinds of conspiracy charges, and it happens regardless of who it is. You know, a wanted narco-terrorist is not shielded by his status as the head of state. The U.S. recognizes no legal immunity under international law for illegitimate rulers like Maduro. Our courts have previously endorsed that position when Noriega was captured back in 1989. And here, Maduro maintained power in an obviously crooked election, the last one in 2024. 70% of the vote went to his opponent, Gonzalez. Neither Trump nor Biden viewed him as the elected head of state, Maduro that is, but instead as, you know, a fugitive outlaw who ran a drug cartel that poisoned Americans. And, you know, there's no treaty or legal document or valid law that prevents our military from going into Venezuela and arresting Maduro by force. You know, nobody seemed to complain when Obama used military force in places like Somalia and Yemen and Pakistan, obviously Iraq and Afghanistan, Libya. And the same people who cheered that are now, condemning Trump for doing exactly what Obama did and to some extent what Biden did.
You know, Greg, I'm reading from the superseding indictment itself, and to your point, it says just on literally the third paragraph that Maduro sits atop a corrupt, illegitimate government that for decades has leveraged government power to protect and promote illegal activity, including drug trafficking. So when we hear from Democrat Congress members saying that this was a illegal activity, and we know there are the specific charges, the 4 charges that Tommy outlined for us, but this also paints a picture that suggests that not only did they have the right to go after him and arrest a indicted narco trafficker, but yet it paints the picture that it was specifically sitting atop that illegitimate government that justifies the administration's actions, but yet the Democrats call it illegal, and even some are pointing to the Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the UN Charter that pertains to the sovereignty of other countries.
Yeah, well, the UN Charter is not worth the paper it's written on. Its only good use is at the bottom of a birdcage. Trump did not need permission from Congress or the UN to act. His authority is inherent in Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution. Indeed, presidents have long taken military action over the last 200 years on their own to protect American citizens, to defend national security without consulting Congress. So, you know, the predictable condemnation from Democrats, I think, is more hysterical and driven by politics, but not law. I've heard some say, oh, the War Powers Resolution. That resolution in 1973 is not a prohibition on a president. It is a notification requirement, and that's about it. And beyond that, and Griff, I heard you talking about this earlier today when we were chatting. You know, Trump can rely on the AUMF, the Authorization for Use of Military Force. Congress passed it a week after 9/11. It gives a president the unilateral power to capture or eliminate terrorists, which would include narco-terrorists like Maduro. So, foursquare, the law is on the side of this president for acting as he did. And, I think the template, we've seen this movie before, was Panama in 1989. And Noriega was convicted and sent to the Hooskow. I think Maduro is destined for the Supermax in Colorado, which is known as the Alcatraz of the Rockies.
Greg, thank you so much for joining us with your expertise, your legal expertise. Griff just read a little bit from the indictment. I want to do that as well because conspiracy is a big part of this, multiple conspiracy charges. And it says that Nicolas Maduro is at the forefront of that corruption and is partnered with his co-conspirators to use his illegally obtained authority and the institutions he corroded to transport thousands of tons of cocaine into the United States. I mean, the indictment goes on much further, 25 pages, talking about the different people that have been involved in this, including his wife, his son, and another man named Hector Russensford Guerrero Flores, who is believed to be very high up in Nicaragua. Your thoughts on the conspiracy angle of this, the number of parties, and how that'll be addressed?
Oh, boy. The number of parties conceivably could expand exponentially because just about everybody in his government was involved in this grand conspiracy of, looting the government and profiting off of, narco-terrorism. This dates back all the way to Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez. When he died, Maduro took over. It was more of the same. Our government has been investigating those involved in the paper trail for more than a decade. And, particularly the transfer of funds, into shell corporations and the money hidden overseas, the money laundering in the extreme. And, I suspect they have the goods on them. There may be some plea deals with other defendants, and I find it interesting that Maduro's wife has now been named in the superseding indictment. I would expect them to, make a deal. And we have seen this before in drug cartel cases where spouses flip and they prove to be some of the most powerful witnesses of all because they knew what was going on and where all the money was hidden.
Greg, Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum has criticized this, saying it's in violation of international law. Previously, the United States, and I think of El Chapo, you talk about the Supermax, one of the residents there is El Chapo. That operation to arrest El Chapo put the Mexican Marines, the FBI, the DEA working together to get that done. Do you think that President Sheinbaum is concerned that the next time an El Chapo in Mexico is arrested, that it won't be the result of cooperation with her country, it'll be a unilateral operation?
Well, and you're right, and Trump has said so. So, she's going to have a few sleepless nights from here on out. She saw the power of the American military and the determination of President Trump to rid the United States of the scourge of these horrendous drugs, not just cocaine, but obviously other drugs infused with deadly fentanyl. A lot of the ingredients come from China. They go into Mexico. They get mixed and distributed from Mexico, smuggled into the United States, and they kill people. Sometimes upwards of 80,000 young people a year in America. Mexico's a villain in all of this and have scarcely lifted a finger. Some of their efforts are nothing more than a charade. And so, I think suddenly the head of Mexico has got a case of the for reals and see what's coming down the line unless she does something aggressively to stop it.
Greg, question for you as well. You kind of alluded to the fact that any dispute here over if the president had the authority to carry this out is laughable. But Democrats certainly don't see it that way, and it's all over social media for an indication there, as well as on other networks. We've got the new mayor here in New York City, Zohran Mamdani, obviously expressing his anger over this. You had Maxine Waters, Congresswoman Maxine Waters, calling this an abduction. It seems as though they're contesting your assertion that the president was within his legal authority and jurisdiction to carry this out. Can you speak to that a little bit as well for those that are following on social media and they're not entirely sure if what happened was legal or not?
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking at any treaty, generally it contains a clause that says, the United States, if it doesn't agree to absolve or protect somebody within a given nation, they can go in and seize individuals who are committing crimes, crimes that harm the United States. The United Nations Charter, as I say, feckless organization, structurally so. Any condemnation or action against the U.S. would have to go through the Security Council, and of course the United States has veto power. So does China, Russia, France, the UK, and so forth. So, I understand the intent behind the United Nations, but it hasn't proven to be very effective over the decades. I do think that they have developed a case over the years that is powerful. I think that Maduro and his legal counsel will argue that he has immunity. But our courts have said, sorry, that really doesn't exist. And our courts don't really care about the consequences surrounding how a defendant is captured and brought to justice, but rather what happens in dispensing justice in their courts.
Greg Jarrett, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to bring you back later in the show for more of your legal analysis.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.